I'm Priscilla Sloan. Today is October 18th, 2024, and I'm here with Patty and Carolyn, both longtime Orangevale residents. Can you please both tell me when you were born and where you were born?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I'm Carolyn. My last name is Schooley now, but it was Ricketts. And I was born January 1st, 1952. And I was the first one born in Fair Oaks in that year. At the time, they didn't give gifts or anything for New Year's babies because you had to be the first one born in Sacramento County. And I was not the first one born in Sacramento County. And what else did you need to know?
Oh, just when you were born and where you were born.
Oh, okay.
I'm Patty, and I was born October 20th, 1962 in Sacramento, but lived in Orangevale my whole life, practically.
And who were both your parents?
My parents were John and Betty Ricketts.
And when were they born?
My mother was born on February 27th in 1931, and my dad was born March 28th, 1925.
And where were they born?
Sacramento, I
I
believe.
believe both of them were born in Sacramento.
Yes.
Okay. What was your mother's maiden name?
Pulsifer.
And do you know about her parents?
Yes.
What were their names?
Phyllis and
Earl, or actually went by
Alfred. Yeah, Pulsifer. And her maiden name was, what was Grandma Pulsifer's maiden name?
Oh, shoot. I don't remember now.
I have all this on the other side on my mind. I can't think of it. It will come to mind.
Okay. And do you know where they were born?
No,
That's okay.
I don't know where they were born.
Now tell me about the Rickett side. Tell me about your paternal grandparents.
Okay, my grandfather's name was Earl, and actually his name was Joseph Earl, but he went by Earl. And my grandmother's name was Margaret, and Margaret's maiden name was Brazel.
Yeah, and she lived came to Orangevale in her early teens.
They lived many places around Orangevale,
But she
and
was,
owned properties many places. I know they did have some property down by Dewey at Dewey. I don't know, Dewey Drive down that way. Van Maren Lane.
Okay.
Down in I don't know whether that's considered Citrus Heights now or what, but their properties all butted up together, and they did farming there.
well, that's when they owned he owned a bunch of the bird streets. Where the bird streets are on San Juan, they own like 181 acres or something like that
Oh my gosh.
of that.
Do you know when that possibly was purchased?
We'd have to look it up here.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
But yeah, we have that info.
While we're
I
looking,
don't have it marked. They also owned property out in Loomis, out kind of beyond where Bayside Church is, out that way. There's a whole big housing tract out there. They owned a lot of land out there that they sold, and houses were built out there as well. And then they kind of stopped with the selling of their property and moved because they were getting older. And they lived various places. They lived on Cherry for a while. They lived on Central for a little while, just down from, just kind of across from Orangevale, what used to be Orangevale School. I know it's not called Orangevale School anymore, but they lived there.
do you know how they met your paternal grandparents?
Yeah, it
They,
at a gathering or something. Oh, they would have. I just read it. Hang on, I have to look here to refresh my memory.
Oh, no problem.
over there.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, they would people in Fair Oaks, Orangevale, and Carmichael colonies were mostly farmers, and they would have parties and picnics as a way of getting acquainted, and that's where they met.
That's where it was,
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah.
How did your parents meet?
Well, my
Mom went to school with
his
younger
his-
sister.
Yeah, his younger sister,
Introduced them.
Marguerite. My mom went to school with, and she introduced her to my dad.
After he come back from the war.
Yeah.
And is that the woman who curated the book that you're referencing?
No, that
That's
would be the
youngest sister.
Marguerite is the youngest sister, and Evelyn is the one that put together the book.
She's older than my dad.
Do you guys want to tell us a little bit more about the book that we're looking at?
There's a lot of stuff in it.
It has a lot of information in it. This is only one of two books that she compiled. This side of the book, this book deals with the Ricketts side of the family, and the other book that she wrote deals with the Brazel side of the family.
For many years, she traveled. She would go to different states, and wherever she'd get a lead of possibly them living or, when they came here, and she'd go and research and see what she could find, and then talk to people and wrote lots of letters back and forth. She's got a lot of them.
A lot of letters that are in here of people that she corresponded with, and just the leads that she got for headstones in cemeteries and places that she went to look, trying to track people down. Yeah.
Is there a local cemetery where a lot of your family members reside at?
Well, I would say just currently there's a lot in Mount Vernon.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I saw reference to there being a Rickett cemetery somewhere. I don't know where it's at, but there is reference in the book to a Rickett cemetery.
Oh, and do you think that would have been property that was sold off at some point, or?
I don't know, because it didn't even tell where it was at. It just that there was knowledge that there was a Rickett cemetery or a section of a cemetery that was just for Ricketts.
Okay.
That might have been at a church or as I took it when I was reading. So.
And here it talks about that they were married in 1917, November 6th, my grandparents.
Your paternal grandparents?
Yes, my dad's parents. And at that time, I guess my grandpa's mom and dad gave him 51 acres of the bird streets, and he bought another 45 acres of the property. And that was between Winding Way and San Juan and Madison.
When you guys spent time with your grandparents when they were still around, did they still own a lot of the property, or?
No.
Okay.
I did not. I don't know about you.
No, the big well, I can remember my mom taking us. I was a Girl Scout, and when my grandparents had the property in Loomis, it's just all oaks and had a stream, little creek running through it and stuff. And I know she took us out there the troop out there for a day, and we did camping for a day on the property, and he gave us a hay ride and around the place. And but that's all I really remember of him having a lot of the big property, because then they were older and they sized down and were just living in smaller little ranches. They weren't housing tracts, but they weren't the big lots of land, like the acres and acres like they had before.
Okay. So how did they acquire so they were given the property from
His parents.
And what did they do with the property before turning it into?
They all were farmers.
Yeah,
So
so they
did
farmed
a lot
the
of-
almonds and
almonds was a biggie. They did wheat,
wheat.
corn. I believe they did corn for a while.
And they even had 5 acres of wine grapes that they sold to the local wineries. But I guess my grandfather, when they deliver it to Sacramento to one of the local wineries, they'd give a complimentary glass of wine, and I guess he didn't care for that.
Oh.
They weren't drinkers.
They weren't drinkers.
Yeah.
None of
none of the relatives as far as even my parents. I don't recall. My dad might have
Like
a
on a hot day.
glass of wine at Thanksgiving or something, but
Or beer on a hot day.
or beer
if
on a
it's
hot
really
day.
hot.
But it's just they just didn't drink it. I
Yeah.
don't think I know my mom ever did.
No.
I don't think she ever tried anything.
So what was the main property that your grandparents resided in near Orangevale? Where was that?
It was the one in Fair Oaks, the San Juan, and then they moved to off of Cherry Avenue.
Could you tell me what it was like at their property growing up?
I have a story. I have a story.
They had a big barn, and I know it had stairs that went up to the upstairs, but we weren't supposed to go up there. But I remember sneaking up there anyway just to see it. And we just had a lot of old furniture and stuff like that in there. And then they also had a cellar, and that thing was scary to go. Just you come out the back door of the house, and it kind of went around like this, and then it was down into
the bathroom was outside the house.
Yeah, I don't remember.
So you
that.
had to go downstairs outside to go to the bathroom. And the potbelly stove was upstairs. So it was really hot upstairs.
Oh.
And then the kitchen was downstairs. And so it always seemed like it was cold downstairs. And then it was just always just scary outside, you know.
Yeah, their front porch had ivy growing all over, so that was kind of scary as a kid to go on the front porch.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I can just remember, we weren't supposed to go up those stairs in the big barn.
And they had, my grandfather being a farmer, was big on his rain gauge. And me being a child and just thinking I was being helpful, I dumped his rain gauge out one time. That did not go over well. I got in big trouble for that one. The other thing, they had guinea hens and chickens running around the property. And they had, I don't know if you've seen them. It's a grinding stone, and you sit with a chair. It has a seat like a bicycle, and the grinding stone is here, and you pedal, and it makes the grinding stone go around. Well, they use that for sharpening tools and stuff. But we got inventive as kids.
I remember riding it. Mm-hmm.
You do? We would gather the quills from the chickens and the guinea hens, and we would sharpen them to make pens so that you could write with ink.
Oh, wow.
So that was always a fun thing to do.
Do you guys ever remember your grandma or your grandpa teaching you anything about helping out on the farm or even in the kitchen?
No.
My grandmother wasn't a big cook.
Oh, okay.
So,
And we go there, and there wasn't even really any toys to play with. It was kind of not.
We had two different sets of grandparents. They were the stoic, serious family, the Ricketts family. But my mom's parents, those grandparents were always the fun grandparents.
The ones that played with it, yeah.
Yeah, would take us out in the in the Jeep and take us for a ride and do fun things like that.
Where was their property?
They lived,
In
as
Elk
far
Grove,
as
yeah.
I can remember, they always lived in Elk Grove.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We did a lot of camping trips with both sides of the family. So we traveled doing that.
Yeah, we get at Christmas time. We'd get $1 in a card from my grandma and grandpa Ricketts every year. Just $1.
Mm-hmm.
And never any toys or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But for them, because they've been through the Depression, that was a big thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You can tell me more about your maternal grandparents in Elk Grove, because we have members who grew up in Elk Grove, because I'm sure they would appreciate hearing about some of the stories over on their property.
Well, they had a fruit stand over at the
At the Roseville
auction.
auction.
In fact, they were, when the bombs went off over there, I don't know if you know about that.
I've heard
The
a
train
little bit,
explosion.
yes.
Is what it
Yes.
was.
Yeah.
Well, it was they were under dirt covered over when there was a train wreck or something, and some of them come off. Well, they just left them there. Anyway, and years later, they started going off.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being in the house here on Pecan, and
We heard it here.
it
The explosion.
just about knocked me out of my bed. I mean, I almost fell out of bed, and it go off, and it's like you duck. As I was looking for my mom, who was sitting at the back fence looking towards that direction, because she knew that her parents were over there on the fruit stand.
Well, they had also they worked at the Roseville auction, and when I was a teenager, I worked for my grandfather on Saturday mornings. I would go over and work the auction, get up at the crack of dawn and go on over there and you just, I don't know if you've ever been to that auction, but it's a pretty big auction. And he sold hard candy, which I thought nobody would ever buy it, but it sold like crazy. And bell peppers, he sold a lot of bell peppers and other produce. But they packaged things up like dried fruit and dried beans, things like that they would sell.
I just remember the clackers. It was had a hand or a little ring, and it had the two strings with had these balls on the glass balls on there.
It was a toy.
Yes, and I can remember us sitting there. You clank them together until you get to a certain point, and you can go like this, and they're going, and it drove them crazy all the time. But that's what we went over there and always had. And that's
So
what
you
we
got
did.
to go over and play. I was the worker.
Yeah.
There's a little over 10 years between the two of us.
Oh.
So yeah, I have different memories than she does.
Yeah, I just remember going over there and playing.
Yeah. They also had cows when my mom was growing up, and she talks about going out and have to milk the cows before school, and then getting home and have to milk the cows again.
That and rounding them up,
yeah, before they go to
Because she
bed.
talks about getting on a horse and just hanging on to the saddle horn because the horse knew what to do, and it would round up those cows, bring them in so she could milk them.
Do you want to tell me more about the property you guys grew up on and what it was like growing up in Orangevale?
Sure.
Well, and I don't know, she remembers the almond trees. We had 15 almond trees on that little over half an acre. And until some sort of fungus went through the ground and killed the trees little by little. But there was one tree we would build a fort in. And we always had a fort out in that almond tree. I can remember my dad laying tarps out, and he would knock the almonds, and then we would gather them up and sack them up in gunny sacks for him to sell. We also did, because we had neighborhood kids, the field out behind my parents' property was just an empty field, and we'd gather the neighborhood kids, and we'd have enough to play softball out there. So we would always go out and play softball.
Do you guys remember any of the neighborhood kids' names?
Kids what?
The neighborhood kids' names, the ones you play softball with?
Doyle was one. Doyle Jester.
Yeah.
And then there was Mike Smith and Bruce Smith and Chad Smith that lived across. In fact, they still live there. The parents do. Live in right kind of catty corner from my parents' house on Pecan. And they've lived there since as long as I can remember. The Smiths, he was a chiropractor, Smith Chiropractic on Main. And so there are another people who have been around Orangevale for a long time. And then there was the Effingers. I mean, that was in Scouts because my brothers were in Scouts, and I just really saw in the paper how Mr. Effinger passed away. But their son was in Scouts with my brothers. And
Was that Mike?
my, yeah, the one that's passed.
Yeah.
He passed, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Davies, Susie Davies was my best friend growing up, and her dad was a veterinarian there off of Greenback, and they had a house that's since gone. But those are.
My brother went to school with the Tomics, so would oh gosh. A lot of the kids at that time, we entered kindergarten and we graduated with them. You know, they would be there the same. I could look at pictures of class pictures from when I was a kid, and probably at least half of them you'd find in the high school graduation picture. You know.
Well, the thing is we had so many cousins, and that's what we were with family a lot. So we had, yes, our few friends from school, I feel, but we mostly spent our time with our cousins. And
well, even at that, we had half a baseball team on ourselves because
there's
okay.
6 of
there's
us.
six in the family.
Oh.
There's 3 boys and 3 girls in the siblings that
We have.
we have. Yeah. So
I'm the youngest girl. She's the oldest girl.
yeah.
So there's one in between who lives in Texas. Then we have the older brother who lives in Fairfield. And then, so it goes brother, sister, the other sister in Texas, and then a brother that just lives off of Almond. Danny is his name. And then me, who I just live by Pecan in Central. And then Mike, who has passed away 9 years ago. And he lived at the house when he passed away.
Where did you all go to school?
Orangevale.
Elementary. I went to Pasteur and then graduated from CASA.
That would be the same with me, but I have a little different because when I went to Orangevale, it went through 8th grade, and then they built Louis Pasteur. And I was in 6th grade at that point, and that's when they switched over. And I went there. I was the first 2-year graduating class from Louis Pasteur. And then they were building the new high school, Casa Roble. And I was a freshman when I went into Casa Roble. But when it was new, they only started with the sophomore class and the freshman class. So, and I was in the freshman class. So I was the first 4-year graduating class out of Casa Roble as well. And because it was not finished, we double timed with, they bused us to San Juan High School. And San Juan High School students did the early shift. So they got up way early in the morning and went till around 1 or around noonish time. And then we were bussed over and we went to school from around noonish time to 4 or something like that. So we were on a split schedule for a half a year before they opened up Casa Roble and we could finish out the year over there.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that's good to know for historical purposes.
Yeah, 'cause my brother, he since it wasn't built yet, he graduated from Bella Vista.
Mm-hmm.
And he went to Carnegie. So we had, kids were here and there going to school. The other thing that was hard about going to a new school is there's no customs or no traditions. So it's really tough. You have to kind of set your own.
Mm-hmm.
There was, even with football, the sports, our sophomores were our varsity team. Our freshmen were our junior varsity team. So we had awful years in sports because we were always beat. Just because
You're young.
their juniors and seniors were playing our sophomores, So we were always the underdog. And so it was the running kind of joke that people would book their homecomings with Casserole, so they knew they were going to win their homecomings.
Mm-hmm. And look at them now.
until they got some oomph behind them when they finally had their
Matching ages.
Yeah.
Well, before our interview, we were talking about the property that you guys grew up on. You had almond trees, and you guys used to help your dad grow them and harvest them. Do you want to tell me more about that?
He always had a garden. We always had a garden. Clear up till he passed away. He was still out there wanting to do his garden. And
he passed a week before he turned 97.
yes.
And he was still out there. He couldn't walk, but he'd be on his little electric scooter, and he couldn't see very well, but he was still out there.
And we cut the handles off some of the hose and stuff
Shovels,
so he could maneuver them better.
And he would be doing that. But I don't know what you wanted in particular on the
I know
almonds.
something about the garden. Weeds. Oh, he did not like weeds. And so if you even said that you were bored, you got to go pull weeds. So it's like...
So we learned not to say we're bored, because that would be what we were doing next, would be out pulling
So
weeds.
we had to do it anyway,
Yeah.
pulling weeds.
He was a big, before people were doing composting, he did his own composting. He would dig holes in like a 3-foot hole, various places in the garden. And that's where the scraps would go from the kitchen, would be out in the hole. And when it gets full, he'd cover it over and dig another hole. And that's what we would do. And then he'd rototill it up, because he always, he had his tractor, and he always rototilled the garden space. And he did that also for the community. He mowed, he did it as a side job, actually. He mowed the water district.
Kept that up.
Orangevale Water District.
My nephew does it now. He took over because the tractor was given to him by my dad. So he does his tractor jobs that he used to do. And taking care of the water district was one of them.
But,
keeping it mowed and
Yeah.
disked and stuff like that.
But a lot of the properties around town, you have to keep the weeds down because of fire. And a lot of people would hire my dad to come in and disc or rototill their property to keep the weeds down. So he did a lot of that for the...
He loved his tractor. Though he had a lawn maintenance business, that was what he did. After he worked at...
Aerojet?
Well, first he worked at Purina.
Yes.
And he used to deliver feed out to the town that's where Folsom Lake is. Before it was Folsom Lake. He would deliver out there. And I didn't even realize that there was a town out there. I was like, why didn't you tell me this when I was younger? He probably did, but I didn't pay attention because it wasn't history. But now I did. And then he worked at Aerojet until they closed that, right? And then he went into lawn maintenance. And that's what he did till he retired. He had people around.
And where was Mom during all this?
Home.
Yeah.
Raising 6 kids.
Oh my goodness.
but she was a very good DIYer, and she was wonderful at using gleaning things. You know, we weren't a family with a lot of money, but we never really were in want of anything.
No, and we did lots of stuff.
We always ate very well. But she could, and anybody, any night of the week could come and stop by the house, and there'd be enough food, you know, put another plate on the table. She was just that kind of a person. So we did a lot of canning.
Yeah.
She would find places that she could pick peaches, or
after they harvested them, there'd still be some left, walnuts and peaches.
she'd get us out there helping her harvest those and bring them in, and then we got to
help peel them
and put them in the jars and stuff.
What'd you guys do with them after they were harvested and preserved? What'd you usually make with them?
just can them whole, you know, you get half a peach and then she'd can them. So we'd have peaches in the wintertime.
Do you guys still have some of that equipment from?
We still have some of those jars.
We had
With fruit in them.
We had so many jars that we had to get rid of when they passed, but I still can.
Oh, okay.
And
make jelly
and I make jelly and stuff, but that's all things that she did when she was raising us. And as you can imagine, when having 6 kids, my experience being a child in that household was way different than hers because being the oldest girl, you get to babysit and take care of your younger siblings. And we all had chores that we had to do. One of the chores that I had to do was the ironing. And back then, my dad wore a white shirt to work at Aerojet, and then he would come home and wear a leisure shirt around the house. And so that would be 2 shirts a day for him. My mom wore pleated skirts on her dresses, and I got to iron all of those things. And she would put she would take the laundry and put it out on the table, and she had this Coke bottle that had a top to it that would sprinkle. She'd fill it full of water, and she'd sit and sprinkle all the clothes and roll them up and put them in a bag. And my job was to get them ironed before they mildewed. So
didn't know that.
You didn't know that? Oh yeah, that was my fun. I mean, you know, that ironing board. We have an ironing board in the house that is in the wall, and it folds down out of the wall. I don't think she realized then how many hours I spent ironing at that ironing board.
And to this day, that ironing board is still there. My nephew kept it as...
When we were redoing the house, we asked him if he wanted to keep it or whether he wanted to get us to, you know, plaster over it, and he says, I want it there. So it is still there in the house. I made a new cover for it.
Right in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Well, ladies, I was wondering if you wanted to talk about that corn on the cob that we have on the table, maybe even give us a demonstration on video of what's inside of it. Could you tell me, Patty, what that is?
That is a corn cob that my uncle, my dad's brother, he ate the corn first. And then he hollowed it out, and they kept their needles for sewing the bags of grain. As they were harvesting the grain, they would have to sew the bags closed.
Well, they had a hopper that would, as they drove this, they would cut the wheat and gather it, and then they put it in the bags, and then they would have somebody sitting on the hopper back there stitching the bags closed.
Yeah, my dad ended up, he said he was too young, he couldn't lift the bags yet, so his job was to drive the tractor. And my uncle, his older brother, is the one that did this, is the one sewing the bags closed.
And why did they keep those needles in the corn cob?
They look very wicked. They're sharp and dangerous, and that way they didn't fall off of if they fall off the tractor, it'd be kind of hard to find
Mm-hmm.
in the ground. So this was
Their way of finding
it and keeping them safe from anybody getting hurt.
And I believe you also told me it's because it doesn't disintegrate too.
The corn cob
Yeah.
does not disintegrate.
Yeah.
So he told me it's about 100 years old. But I don't know if that would be right.
That can't be
because
right.
it'd have to be more like about 80 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's about 80 years old. Harder than hard. Yeah.
I just thought that was the neatest thing when you brought it in.
Yeah, it is. Because it's just interesting.
And another great thing that you guys brought in for our interview is your dad's World War II uniform. Did he ever talk about his service?
A few things.
Yeah.
He
Very,
did.
very rarely, because he was on Iwo Jima, and it was, I think, so traumatic for him that he just didn't want to ever relive any of that.
He was the mechanic for the
Tanks.
Sorry, I had a mental block there. Yeah, he was a tank mechanic, but he also fought too. But he talks about one time they fixed a tank and then they were in it test driving it and they almost went over a cliff. Scared him. And he talks about
Somewhere they got a big can of fruit cocktail,
he stole it.
and
They were offloading a ship, and this was all for the higher up guys. They were to feed them, and it was a fruit cocktail or something.
it was a big can of fruit. And
and
they
he-
remember they took it back, and they all just so enjoyed
Opened it up, and they had just whatever, scooping it out, eating it, and it was very
And the one scary thing, the story that he told was that in their fighting, sometimes they'd fight for days without any sleep. And he said he climbed, he couldn't go again anymore. He said he climbed into a foxhole. And when he woke up, there was a dead Japanese right at the entrance of his foxhole. So somebody had saved him.
because they would run out, go along, and just stick their guns down in the foxholes and just shoot. And so he lived because somebody else got him. But yeah, and he also saw them put up the flag, that famous flag that they put up. He watched them do that.
From a distance. He
From a
said
distance.
he refused to go.
He wasn't going to be because the first set of men were shot because they were sitting goats, out there and they got killed. And so it was the second group of men who actually got the flag up and they took a picture of it. But he watched it.
And
Him do it.
And he was in the Marine Corps, right?
Yes.
Yes. I just wanted to make sure to say which branch he was a part
He
of.
was a Marine.
He
Yes.
was a Marine.
Yes.
Very proud of it, but he just never really talked much about it. And those are the only stories I remember him ever telling.
And he got the sharpshooter pin, but he never had a gun after that. When he came home, my brothers went hunting and stuff, but he didn't have anything to do with it. Yeah.
Well, because you brought so many wonderful artifacts and books, is there any stories that you want to include before we end our interview? Or are you happy with the information we shared today?
We could sit here all day. No.
Can we turn it back on if we think of any more?
Yeah. No, we can end right here because it's been such a wonderful interview. If we don't continue, I can edit this part. And I just want to thank both of you ladies for coming in. It's been a pleasure talking to both of you.
Thank you.
It's
Yes.
been our pleasure too.
Yeah.
At least mine.
Thank you, ladies.